Sony Xperia smartphone was launched in February 2019. The phone comes with a 6.50-inch touchscreen display with an aspect ratio of 21:9. It is powered by an octa-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 processor. It comes with 6 GB of RAM. As far as the cameras are concerned, the Sony Xperia on the rear packs a 12-megapixel primary camera with an 1.6 aperture, a second 12-megapixel camera with an 2.4 aperture, and a third 12-megapixel camera with an 2.4 aperture. The rear camera setup has autofocus. It sports the 8-megapixel camera on the front for selfies. The Sony Xperia runs Android 9.0 and is powered by a 3300 mAh battery. The Sony Xperia supports wireless charging as well as proprietary fast charging. This phone supports storage expansion via microSD card up to 512 GB. It was launched in black, grey, purple and white colors. It features an IP68 rating for dust and water protection. The Xperia 5 Mark II is a smaller version of the Xperia Mark II. It's got the same narrow 21:9 ratio display, although it's only 6.1 inches compared to the Xperia Mark II's 6.7-inch screen. While it's only Full HD Plus resolution, but the display has a 120Hz refresh rate. This is good for smoothing out the screen while browsing apps or scrolling down web pages. The phone's gaming software allows you to tinker with refresh rate even while playing games, which is a neat feature seen in few other handsets. The phone's USB-C port is on the bottom and the 3.5mm headphone jack at the top, which will let you charge the phone and listen to audio at the same time, which is nice. The phone's back is smooth glass with the camera block in the top left corner. The Xperia 5 Mark II packs a Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset with 8 GB of RAM and either 128 GB or 256 GB of storage. This is a great CPU for gaming and photography. Everything will run smoothly. Sony says the device will debut with Android 10 software. The Xperia 5 Mark II inherits all of its cameras from the Xperia Mark II. It got 3 rear cameras and single front-facing camera. The 3 rear cameras are all 12-megapixel shooters, a main camera simulating a 24mm lens, and an ultra-wide camera simulating a 16mm lens, and a telephoto simulating a 70mm lens. You can record 4K video at 120 FPS. As usual, Sony delivers amazing picture quality, and rest assured you will get the best smartphone photography experience with this device. There's a single 8-megapixel front-facing camera. Like other Sony Xperia phones, it's located in a solid black bar at the top of the phone. That means there's no notch for the Xperia 5 Mark II. The phone has the same 4000 mAh battery with 21W fast charging support. The Sony Xperia Mark II comes with a 6.5-inch display that has a 4K resolution. It's a HDR OLED panel. However, the company has included a new feature that will allow for a 90Hz effect on the screen, but it doesn't seem to use an actual 90Hz panel. Sony's latest flagship phone features a 3.5mm headphone jack on the top edge. The design is glass on the front and back, both of which are protected by Corning Gorilla Glass 6 technology, and it will come in either black or purple. It also has a full bezel at the top rather than a notch or punch hole. Inside the Sony Xperia Mark II, there is a Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset, which is one of the very best processors on the market. It offers some strong performance and be able to cope with all the tasks that most other top-end phones can do. The phone comes with 8 GB of RAM to keep it running. Storage-wise, you have got 256 GB of space to play with here, and that's expandable with a microSD card. 5G is one of the big talking points of Xperia Mark II. There's no 4G only variant of this phone. The camera is another area Sony's put a spotlight on. The camera includes a 12-megapixel main sensor, a 12-megapixel telephoto with 3x optical zoom, and a 12-megapixel ultra-wide sensor, alongside a 3D time-of-flight sensor that will offer groundbreaking autofocus technology. It's using a technology that Sony developed for its alpha range of cameras, and the aim here is to give you the best shot through stronger autofocus. This technology can completely autofocus and auto-exposure calculations at 60 frames per second, while the camera itself can take 20 shots in burst mode each second. But Sony claims it improves autofocus for low light conditions as well as in everyday shooting. The phone can also record video in 4K HDR at up to 60 FPS. Pictures are amazing with this camera with its stunning dynamic range and color accuracy. On the front of the phone, there's an 8 megapixel selfie camera, and Sony announced they have made significant improvements for front-facing shots. Sony has also made some big improvements to the battery on this device by increasing it to 4000 mAh on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II, up from 3330 mAh on the Xperia 1. There's also fast charging here that will allow for up to 50% charge in 30 minutes. The wide 21:9 aspect ratio coupled with the symmetrical top and bottom bezels make Xperia phones stand out without straying too far from the iconic smartphone design. The front and back are Gorilla Glass 6 and a plastic frame between them. There's a volume rocker on the right and a capacitive fingerprint sensor just below it. The 3.5mm audio jack has survived for yet another generation and is placed on the top. The SIM tray is located on the left side of the frame, and you can use your fingernail to open the flap and take out the card. This phone comes with IP65/68 rating, which means it's protected for up to 1.5 meters of immersion for up to 30 minutes. Xperia 10 Mark III features a 6-inch OLED HDR panel with a resolution of 1080x2520 and 479 ppi pixel density. The resulting image is quite sharp and clear. The color accuracy of the panel is also fairly good. Color reproduction is very good, and watching YouTube or Netflix is a treat with this device. Sony Xperia 10 Mark III follows closely in the footsteps of its predecessor with the familiar triple camera setup. You have got your main 12 megapixel camera and an 8 megapixel ultra-wide snapper and a telephoto lens with 2x optical zoom and an 8 megapixel sensor underneath. This camera setup works well most of the time. It's a practical setup that makes a lot of sense. The camera algorithms are quite good in detecting various scenes such as backlight, macro, gourmet, portrait and more. The AI can also detect if you are using a tripod or shooting handheld and adjust the settings accordingly. There are two modes on the ultra-wide. One prioritizes image quality and the other one takes care of image distortion through clever algorithms. It works pretty well and I highly recommend using it, specifically when you shoot compositions with lots of geometrical shapes and straight lines. There's a dedicated night mode and it brings good result. The selfie camera is a 8 megapixel sensor and it delivers decent selfies. You can shoot videos up to 4K at 30 fps, which is not a bad feature on a budget phone. However, 30 fps looks choppy, especially if you're recording dynamic and fast-paced videos. You will find a Snapdragon 690 chipset inside this phone. This chipset is another 5G solution for the mid-range segment. Although it's not the most powerful processor on the market, it does get the job done. There is some stutter from time to time. It's more prominent in the camera app, maybe due to the heavy software processing going on. On the other hand, the 690 is manufactured using 8nm tech, so it's very energy efficient and it also supports 5G. The Xperia 10 Mark III comes equipped with 6GB of RAM, a slight increase from the previous generation. The onboard memory is 128GB and you can expand it via the microSD card slot that's still present. On the software side of things, we have got Android 11 with some Sony tweaks here and there. The interface is pretty clean. The Xperia 10 Mark III is a battery life champion. The 4500 mAh battery coupled with the energy efficient chipset and the 60Hz OLED display offers great battery life. It comes with 30W fast charge support. Sony's smartphones have always been different than other brands, and the Xperia 1 Mark III continues this trend. From the unusually tall, boxy body to the SIM tray that can be removed with just a fingernail and the noticeable top and bottom bezel, this is a design that anyone who's seen a Sony phone in the past half decade will recognize. There are two new hardware features this year: a 4K 120Hz OLED screen, the first phone in the industry to offer such high resolution and refresh rate, and a variable periscope zoom lens that can change optical focal length from 70mm to 105mm. The other standard flagship specs are present here: Snapdragon 888 chipset, UFS 3.1 storage, IP68 water resistance, wireless charging for that 4500 mAh cell, and Gorilla Glass protection for the front and back of the device. The phone also offers several things that most flagships have eliminated. It has front-facing stereo speaker, a microSD card slot for storage expansion, and a headphone jack. There's a very unique app called Cinema Pro and aimed at serious photographers. It offers true controls over filming, including manual ISO, shutter speed, white balance, as well as the ability to manual focus. If you know what you are doing, you can pull off cinematic tricks that even an iPhone can do, such as changing focus in a continuous shot. But if you don't know beyond the basics of operating a camera, the app will be very hard to use. The main camera app is a bit more novice friendly. It defaults to shooting in automatic mode, and the resulting shots from the main 12-megapixel shooter can be quite pleasant. Ultimately, I find the phone's software image processing to be a step or two behind what top mainstream phones can do, especially when it comes to HDR photos. Having a dedicated shutter button on the side of the device is a welcome addition for those who take photography more seriously. The button can be pressed halfway to lock focus, a feature often seen in real cameras. Overall, the main and the ultrawide camera of the Xperia 1 Mark III performs very well. The variable periscope zoom lens is a treat. The shots appear sharp and the color level and details are great. You can record 4K video at 120 fps, which captures one of the best detailed and optimized videos. There is a single 8-megapixel selfie camera on the front and it captures stellar picture. Performance will be no issues due to the flagship chip. Snapdragon 888 chip powers this phone and it's a 5G ready phone. Day-to-day use and gaming will be very snappy and you can play anything at highest possible settings. Sony has added in some gamer-centric features including motion blur reduction and high FPS video recording. It comes with 12GB of RAM and 256GB or 512GB of storage option. The battery life suffers because of the very power-hungry 4K 120Hz screen. The device is powered by a 4500 mAh battery with 30W fast charge support.